Imagine walking into school one morning, thinking it's just another ordinary day, and suddenly, every eye in the hallway is on you. You try to stay calm, but your stomach twists. You've done nothing wrong, yet someone in authority decides you're breaking the rules. That's exactly what happened to Ethan, a quiet 15-year-old boy, because of a tiny tattoo on his face. It wasn't gang-related. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't meant to provoke anyone. But to the teachers, it was enough to warrant punishment. One strict teacher, Mr. Thompson, immediately singled him out, his eyes narrowing with disapproval. Ethan's heart pounded. His classmates whispered, some shocked, some afraid, some curious. He tried to explain, "It's just personal. It's art. My parents know." But no one was listening. And just when Ethan thought he was about to face the consequences alone, everything changed. A sleek black car pulled up outside the school. The doors opened, and in walked his father, a billionaire entrepreneur, known not just for wealth, but for wisdom, power, and influence. James Carlyle didn't rush in shouting or intimidating. He walked in calmly. But the moment he entered, the energy in the room shifted. Every teacher, every student, froze. What happened next was unbelievable. Instead of demanding punishment be dropped because of money or status, James did something far more powerful. He spoke, not to humiliate, not to intimidate, but to teach. He defended his son, yes, but more importantly, he delivered a lesson about respect, individuality, and courage that left everyone in the room speechless. Ethan's life, the rules of the school, and even the way the teachers saw discipline, everything was about to be turned upside down. And you'll see, step by step, how a small tattoo sparked one of the most unforgettable moments in Greenwood High's history. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just a story about punishment. It's about courage. It's about understanding. It's about standing up for yourself, even when the world seems against you. And the ending? It will leave you inspired, emotional, and questioning how you view rules, authority, and individuality. You won't believe what happens when Ethan's father finally speaks, and the school realizes that discipline isn't always about punishment. It's about teaching life lessons in the most unforgettable way possible. It was a bright Monday morning at Greenwood High, the kind of day that promised routine, laughter, and the usual hustle of students rushing to their classes. The sun spilled golden light across the manicured lawns, and the air smelled faintly of fresh paint from the classrooms. Birds chirped in the background, adding a serene soundtrack to what everyone assumed would be just another ordinary day. But little did anyone know, this day was going to turn completely upside down for one student, a quiet, thoughtful boy named Ethan. Ethan wasn't your typical high school student. He didn't sit in the back row just to avoid attention, nor did he spend his days trying to impress others. He was thoughtful, observant, and often lost in his own world of drawing and writing. But recently, Ethan had made a decision that would make him stand out far more than he ever imagined. He had gotten a tattoo, not just anywhere, but on his face, a small, delicate black symbol etched just above his cheekbone. To Ethan, it wasn't rebellion. It wasn't a statement of defiance. It was personal. It was art. It represented something deeply meaningful that he wanted to carry with him every day. As he walked through the school gates that morning, Ethan could feel eyes on him. Some students whispered quietly, curious but careful not to make it obvious. Others pretended not to notice, though he could see the brief flickers of surprise in their glances. Even the security guard at the front gave him a quick, raised eyebrow look, probably wondering why a student would have a visible tattoo. But Ethan held his head high, taking the stairs in stride. He was prepared for curious classmates, but he wasn't ready for the storm that awaited him in his very first class of the day. Mr. Thompson, the head of discipline, was already standing at the door, clipboard in hand, watching the students file in. He was a man known for his strict adherence to rules, and he had an intimidating presence that could silence even the loudest students. His jaw tightened as soon as his eyes fell on Ethan. The moment Ethan walked into the classroom, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations paused. Chairs scraped against the floor. Even the buzzing fluorescent lights seemed to dim as Mr. Thompson's glare locked onto Ethan. "Ethan," Mr. Thompson called, his voice sharp and commanding. "Come here." Ethan's stomach sank. He knew exactly what this was about. He had heard stories about students who had been punished for far less. Students who had accidentally violated the dress code or even worn slightly unusual hairstyles. A tattoo on the face? This was a serious matter in Mr. Thompson's eyes. "Yes, sir," Ethan replied, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "You know the rules," Mr. Thompson said, pointing at the tattoo with a scowl. "Visible tattoos are strictly prohibited in this school. Remove it immediately or face severe consequences." Ethan swallowed hard, trying to steady his thoughts. "Sir, it's not offensive, and it's not gang-related. It's personal. It's art. My parents—" "Don't interrupt me," Mr. Thompson snapped, cutting him off mid-sentence. "I don't care what it represents. The rules are clear, and you are breaking them. There will be consequences. Ethan, do I make myself clear?" The other students in the class shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some avoided looking directly at Ethan, fearing they might draw attention to themselves. Others whispered quietly to their neighbors, murmuring about how harsh Mr. Thompson could be. A few, braver ones, shot sympathetic glances at Ethan, knowing he was about to face a situation most kids dreaded. Ethan's palms were sweaty, but he tried to keep calm. He had faced challenges before, but something about Mr. Thompson's presence made him feel unusually small and vulnerable. He understood that no matter how reasonable his explanation was, it might not matter to someone who saw rules as absolute. Finally, Mr. Thompson made a decision. "You're going to the principal's office immediately. We'll discuss your punishment there." Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. He had anticipated discipline, but the intensity of it, the way Mr. Thompson's eyes burned into him, made him realize that this wasn't just a minor warning. It was going to be a full confrontation. As he followed the teacher out of the classroom, whispers filled the hallways. Some students whispered, "I can't believe he has a tattoo on his face." Others murmured, "I hope he doesn't get expelled." Passing the lockers, Ethan noticed his friends giving him worried looks. One of them, a tall boy named Liam, whispered, "Don't let him scare you, man. It's just a tattoo. That's all." Ethan nodded silently, grateful for support, but also aware that support wouldn't change what was coming. Even the principal's office felt intimidating when he arrived. The walls were lined with plaques celebrating academic achievements and perfect attendance, symbols of discipline and structure. Ethan knew that the decision here could impact his school life, possibly even his future. As he stepped inside, the office fell silent. Every staff member present turned to look at him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and judgment. And at that moment, no one knew just how drastically the day was about to change. Little did Ethan realize that what began as a routine school day, a simple walk to the halls with a tattoo on his face, would soon turn into a story no one at Greenwood High would ever forget. This was more than just a tattoo. It was a test of courage, individuality, and the boundaries of authority. And for Ethan, it was the beginning of a day that would alter the entire school's understanding of rules, respect, and personal expression. Ethan's footsteps echoed through the long hallway as he was escorted to the principal's office. Every echo seemed to amplify the weight of the moment, making his stomach twist with anxiety. The whispers from students faded behind him, but the memory of their curious glances lingered. Ethan tried to steady his breathing, reminding himself that he hadn't done anything wrong. His tattoo was personal, meaningful, and harmless. Yet, in the eyes of the school authorities, it was a violation, a mark that needed to be punished. When he reached the principal's office, Principal Harris looked up from her neatly organized desk, her expression a mix of concern and authority. She was known as a fair leader, someone who usually listened before judging, but even she had rules to enforce. "Ethan," she said calmly, gesturing to the chair in front of her desk, "please sit down." Ethan obeyed, his hands trembling slightly as he placed them on his lap. He could feel the tension in the room thickening like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Sir, ma'am," he began cautiously, "I know it's against the rules, but it's just a tattoo. It doesn't hurt anyone. Please, can you understand that it's personal?" Principal Harris sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Ethan, I understand that it may have personal meaning for you, but the school has strict policies. Visible tattoos, especially on the face, are not allowed. You should have considered the consequences before getting it." Ethan's throat tightened. He had anticipated resistance, but he hadn't expected it to feel so suffocating. "I did think about it," he replied softly. "I didn't get to rebel or disrespect anyone. It's a symbol of something important in my life, something that reminds me to stay strong. Please, I promise I won't break any rules or disrupt anything." Principal Harris folded her hands on the desk, her eyes studying him carefully. She could see the sincerity in his expression, the quiet determination that seemed to radiate despite his fear. But rules, she reminded herself, were rules. "I appreciate your honesty, Ethan, but you still have to face the consequences. Detention is the minimum, and I'll be contacting your parents immediately." Ethan's heart sank. He knew his father was powerful, wealthy, and influential, but he also knew that school discipline was often left to the school's discretion. Would his father even care enough to intervene? Or would he trust Ethan to handle the situation on his own? Just as he was about to respond, the office door opened abruptly. A sleek black SUV pulled up outside, and within moments, a man in an impeccably tailored suit strode in. His presence was magnetic. The office seemed smaller, the air heavier, as if the very room recognized the authority that had just entered. Every teacher and student nearby felt a shift, a ripple of anticipation. "That's him." A whisper spread to the office like wildfire. "That's Ethan's father." Indeed, the man was James Carlisle, one of the wealthiest men in the country, a billionaire entrepreneur with an empire that spanned technology, real estate, and philanthropy. But unlike many others of his stature, James carried his power with a calm, quiet confidence. He didn't need to raise his voice to command respect. It was simply in the way he moved, the way his gaze held the room captive. James walked directly to the principal's desk, his eyes briefly meeting Ethan's. There was no anger in his face, no immediate judgment, just a quiet intensity that made everyone in the room instinctively pay attention. "What seems to be the problem?" James asked, his voice calm but firm, each word deliberate. The authority in his tone was unmistakable. It wasn't a demand, but everyone knew it was backed by the weight of consequence. Mr. Thompson, clearly unsettled, shuffled nervously. He cleared his throat. "Sir, Ethan has a tattoo on his face. It's against school rules, and we thought he should be punished." James turned slowly toward his son, studying him. Ethan's face flushed with embarrassment. Yet there was also a flicker of hope, a spark that perhaps his father's presence could change everything. James's eyes returned to Mr. Thompson. "I see," he said thoughtfully. "So you are punishing a 15-year-old for expressing himself in a harmless way? For making a personal choice that doesn't affect anyone else?" The room fell silent. Even Principal Harris seemed caught off guard. No one dared interrupt. James Carlisle didn't shout, he didn't threaten, yet his words carried a power that made Mr. Thompson fidget in place. James continued, turning slightly to address both the principal and the teacher. "I respect the rules of this institution. I respect discipline. But I also believe in teaching children to understand individuality, responsibility, and self-expression. Punishing Ethan for a tattoo that doesn't harm anyone, that's not guidance. That's fear disguised as authority." Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. His father wasn't just defending him. He was teaching, enlightening, and commanding all at once. He felt a surge of pride and gratitude, emotions so strong they made his chest ache. The tension in the room was palpable. Teachers shifted uneasily in their seats, realizing that they were not just confronting a wealthy parent. They were confronting someone who demanded fairness, reason, and respect. James finally turned to Ethan. "Son, stand by your choices responsibly. You need to understand the world will judge you for your decisions. But you also need to know when someone is trying to unfairly limit you. Today is one of those moments." Ethan nodded, his hands gripping the edge of his chair. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't alone, like someone powerful was on his side, but not to scare others, to defend him. He was being shown the balance between courage and responsibility. And just like that, what began as a typical punishment had transformed into a life lesson, for Ethan, for the teachers, and for everyone witnessing it. The room, once tense with conflict, was now heavy with reflection. The ordinary school day had taken a turn that no one could have predicted. Ethan's tattoo, once a source of potential punishment, had now become a symbol of understanding, respect, and parental guidance that would leave a lasting impression on everyone present. The office fell completely silent after James Carlisle's arrival. His presence alone had shifted the entire energy in the room. Mr. Thompson fidgeted with his tie, and even Principal Harris, a woman known for her calm demeanor, appeared slightly unsettled. Everyone could feel the weight of the moment. This was not going to be a typical parent-teacher conversation. This was something different, something that would leave a lasting impression on all present. James looked at his son, Ethan, and saw the mix of fear, embarrassment, and hope in his eyes. Ethan's small tattoo, delicate and intricate on his cheek, was the reason they were here. But James immediately saw beyond the surface. This was about more than a tattoo. It was about self-expression, confidence, and teaching a young boy to stand up for his choices without being reckless. He turned slowly toward Mr. Thompson and Principal Harris, his voice calm, precise, but undeniably powerful. "I understand that you are concerned about school rules," James began, "and I respect that rules exist for a reason. Discipline is important. Order is important. But there's a difference between teaching a child responsibility and punishing a child for a harmless self-expression." The teachers exchanged uneasy glances. No one had dared to challenge Mr. Thompson openly before, but James Carlyle was doing so with such authority and composure that even the head of discipline seemed momentarily speechless. James continued, his gaze unwavering. "Ethan is not here to disrespect anyone, nor to challenge authority. He has made a choice that carries meaning to him personally. And yet, you are punishing him simply because it does not conform to your expectations. Is that really education? Is that really teaching? Or is it intimidation disguised as rules?" Ethan could feel his heart pounding. His father's words were not just a defense. They were a lesson, one that made every adult in the room pause and reflect. He had never felt so proud, so validated, and so relieved, all at the same time. James turned his focus back to Ethan. "Son, you need to understand that life is full of moments like this. Moments when authority might not see the meaning behind her actions. Moments when people might judge you unfairly. What matters is how you respond. Stand by your choices, but do so responsibly. Respect others. Respect the rules where necessary, but also respect yourself." There was a quiet intensity in James's tone that made even the most confident teacher uneasy. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Sir, with all due respect, school rules are—" James raised a hand gently, stopping him. "And with all due respect, Mr. Thompson, sometimes rules need perspective. They are meant to guide, not to suppress. You are educators, not enforcers of fear. Teach children to understand the world, not to fear it. Guide them, yes, but do not punish them unnecessarily for choices that harm no one." The silence that followed was profound. Teachers shifted in their seats. Principal Harris leaned back, absorbing the words. There was no argument, no yelling, no threats, just truth, delivered by a man who understood power but chose to wield it wisely. James's eyes softened as he looked at Ethan again. "I want you to remember this moment. Life will challenge you, and sometimes unfairly. People will judge you without understanding. But it is in those moments you learn the most. You learn the value of standing up for yourself. You learn the balance between courage and respect. And you learn the power of guidance from those who truly care about you." Ethan felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. His father wasn't just defending him. He was giving him the kind of life lesson that most people only learn after years of mistakes and heartache. Here, in this office, with teachers and administrators watching, James Carlyle was teaching him more than rules or discipline. He was teaching him about integrity, self-expression, and the courage to stand tall even when judged. Mr. Thompson swallowed hard, finally speaking in a quieter, more respectful tone. I understand, sir. Thank you for your perspective." Principal Harris nodded slowly. "We will ensure that Ethan is treated fairly, and we will take this as a lesson for how we approach these situations in the future." James gave a small, satisfied nod. "Good. Ethan will not face detention for this tattoo. But let this be a reminder to both him and to all of you that education is not just about rules and punishment. It is about understanding, guiding, and helping young people grow into confident, responsible adults." He turned to Ethan one last time. "Remember, son, you are free to express yourself, but always with responsibility. And never be afraid to stand up for who you are, as long as you do it with respect. The room remained quiet for a moment longer. Teachers and administrators were absorbing the depth of what had just happened. They had come in expecting a routine disciplinary matter, perhaps even a stern lecture, but instead they had witnessed something extraordinary, a father standing up for his child, not with intimidation or wealth, but with wisdom, perspective, and authority. Ethan exhaled slowly, a weight lifting from his chest. He had faced fear, authority, and judgment all in the span of one school day, and had come out stronger. His father's words had not only shielded him from punishment, but had also empowered him to understand the significance of responsibility and courage. That moment, small as it might have seemed to outsiders, was monumental for everyone in the office. For Ethan, it was validation. For the teachers, it was a lesson in leadership, empathy, and the real purpose of education. And for the school, it became an unforgettable story, one that would be remembered not as a disciplinary incident, but as a moment of growth, understanding, and profound insight into human character. The ordinary Monday had turned extraordinary, all because a father chose to teach, guide, and protect, not with wealth or anger, but with wisdom. By the time James Carlisle left the principal's office, the atmosphere at Greenwood High had completely transformed. What began as a routine disciplinary issue, a tattoo on a student's face, had become a profound lesson for everyone present. Teachers whispered to one another, realizing they had just witnessed more than a conflict between rules and a student. They had witnessed a masterclass in leadership, empathy, and understanding from a parent who knew how to balance authority with compassion. Ethan walked slowly down the hallway, feeling the weight of what had just happened. His cheeks still tingled, not from embarrassment, but from relief and pride. He had faced authority, rules, and the fear of punishment, and he had come through it stronger. The whispers from his classmates followed him, a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and awe. "Wow!" One student whispered to another. "Did you see that? His dad is like unstoppable." "Yeah," another replied. But he wasn't mean. He wasn't scary. He just knew what he was doing. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in a long time. He knew that what he had just learned from his father would stay with him forever. Courage wasn't just about standing up in the face of authority. It was about doing so responsibly, with respect, and with thoughtfulness. Meanwhile, the teachers gathered quietly to reflect. Mr. Thompson, the strict head of discipline who had originally sent Ethan to the principal, found himself in deep thought. He had spent years believing that rules alone maintained order, that discipline meant fear, and that students needed strict enforcement to behave. But James Carlisle had shown him another way, a way to guide, educate, and inspire without intimidation. He looked at Principal Harris and said softly, I think I understand now. Rules are important, yes, but sometimes it's about teaching them life lessons, not just enforcing obedience." Principal Harris nodded. "Exactly. Today wasn't just about a tattoo. It was about perspective, empathy, and understanding the individual behind the action. This is something we all need to remember moving forward." Back in the hallways, students began sharing the story of what had happened. Ethan, once just a quiet boy with a small tattoo, had now become a symbol, an example of courage, self-expression, and the power of having someone believe in you. His peers began to see him differently, not with judgment or fear, but with respect. Some even admitted quietly that they had been afraid to express themselves fully, worried about how authority figures might react. Ethan's experience inspired them to consider standing up for their own choices responsibly. Even the school's environment subtly shifted. Teachers and students alike realized that discipline wasn't just about punishment. It was about understanding the reasons behind actions, communicating effectively, and fostering growth rather than fear. That day, Greenwood High learned that education was more than academics. It was about building character, teaching values, and shaping young people to face the world with confidence and integrity. As for Ethan, he felt a renewed sense of self. His tattoo, once a potential source of conflict, had now become a reminder of courage, wisdom, and the importance of family support. He understood that rules were not inherently bad, but they needed context, compassion, and understanding to truly serve their purpose. And he knew that, moving forward, he could face challenges not with fear, but with confidence, knowing he had the guidance and support to navigate difficult situations. That evening, as Ethan returned home, he found his father waiting for him. James smiled warmly. "I'm proud of you today," he said, "not just for standing by your choice, but for listening, learning, and showing respect. That's true courage, Ethan. Always remember that." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "Thanks, Dad," he replied quietly. "I won't forget this day." James patted his son on the shoulder. "I know you won't, and neither will anyone else at Greenwood High. Remember, it's not the tattoo or the rules that define you. It's how you handle yourself in every situation." That night, as Ethan reflected on the events of the day, he realized something profound. Life was full of challenges, moments of judgment, and situations where people might misunderstand or misjudge him. But what mattered most was integrity, responsibility, and the courage to stand for what he believed was right. His father's lesson would guide him for years to come, shaping him not only as a student but as a person. The story of Ethan and his tattoo soon spread throughout the school. Students talked about it for weeks. Teachers reflected on it for months. And Principal Harris even used it as an example during staff meetings to show the importance of empathy in education. It became more than a story about a tattoo. It became a story about understanding, respect, guidance, and the balance between rules and individuality. For Ethan, it became a turning point. He was no longer just a boy with a tattoo. He was a young man who had learned how to stand tall in the face of judgment, how to handle authority with respect, and how to navigate the complex world of rules and self-expression. And it all started with a single, small tattoo on his cheek, and a father who knew how to teach the right lesson in the right way. Greenwood High would never forget that Monday. The students would tell the story for years, remembering the day a boy with a tattoo faced punishment, only to be guided by wisdom, courage, and the presence of a father who understood the true meaning of education. It was a lesson in life, learning, and the power of standing up for yourself, with respect, thoughtfulness, and integrity. And for Ethan, it wasn't just a lesson. It was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one where he understood that courage, responsibility, and self-expression could coexist, and that sometimes the right guidance at the right moment could change everything.